Good evening and welcome to the Monday, September 11th, 2023, 6 p.m. regular joint meeting of the Bell Garden City Council and Successor Agency to the Community Development Commission. The meeting will now come to order at 6:05 p.m. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any of the members should have a conflict of interest, please announce any item you are recusing from due to the conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. Tonight's invocation will be given by Pastor Daniel.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, our police chief, and city staff. In this hour, let us pray and remember that as we pray, we come before God's presence. Let us bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you in this evening. I thank you for your goodness. I thank you for our mayor, for our city council, our police and fire departments, and all of our city staff for making Bell Gardens a better and safer place. I also pray for the leaders of our state and our nation. In this hour, I ask that your knowledge and wisdom be with the leaders in this room so that they may have your guidance in all matters discussed in this evening. We thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the Girl Scout Troop 2543.
Place the flag, put your right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may now be seated.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call roll the members of the City Council and Successor Agency.
Thank you. Members of the Council and Successor Agency, Barcena.
Present.
Councilmember Gomez.
Present.
Councilmember Pulido.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Present.
And Mayor Sanchez.
Present. We will now move to the presentations. City Manager, please introduce the presentations.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Sorry about that. If it's okay with the mayor, we'll take the presentations out of order. Is that okay, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with the proclamation in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you so much. City of Bell Gardens proclamation, a proclamation in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas each year the United States observes National Hispanic Heritage Month by celebrating the culture, heritage, and countless contributions of those whose ancestors were indigenous in North America, as well as those who came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. And what began in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Johnson was expanded by President Reagan in 1988 to cover a 30-day period starting on September 15th and ending on October 15th. And the people of Hispanic descent are the heirs of missionaries, captains, soldiers, and farmers who were motivated by a young spirit of adventure and a desire to settle freely in a free land. This heritage is ours, and Hispanic and Latino Americans have served our country in the past and continue to serve in significant and enduring ways today. And although too numerous to recognize individually by name, Latinos serve as civil rights leaders and community organizers, politicians, soldiers, educators, journalists, first responders, pioneers in art and science, healthcare professionals, athletes, inventors, entertainers, and so much more. And several of our states and many of our cities bear Hispanic names and continue Hispanic traditions that enrich our national life. And Hispanics continue their rich history of significant and diverse contributions to the cultural, educational, economic, and political vitality of Bell Gardens, California, Los Angeles County, and the entire United States of America. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Bell Gardens City Council do hereby proclaim September 15th and October 15th through October 15, 2023 as Hispanic Heritage Month, and encourage all residents of Bell Gardens to celebrate and honor the rich diversity of Latino community and celebrate the many ways they contribute to our nation and society. Proclaim this 11th day of September 2023, signed by our Mayor, Francis de Leon Sanchez, with our Bell Gardens City Council. Good stuff. Thank you.
Please announce the next presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. The next presentation will be to recognize National Preparedness Month for the month of September.
This is a proclamation in honor of National Preparedness Month. Whereas National Preparedness Month is an observance each September to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen at any time. And whereas in 2021, FEMA's Ready campaign and the Ad Council broke ground by producing the first ever national preparedness campaign specifically targeting the Latino community for National Preparedness Month. Released during Hispanic Heritage Month, the advertisement centered around the Latino community's commitment to personal planning for occasions and family milestones as a bridge to also planning for disasters. And whereas FEMA's Ready campaign this year will focus on preparing older adults for disaster, knowing older adults can face greater risks when it comes to the multitude of extreme weather events and emergencies we now face, especially if they are living alone, are low income, or have a disability. And whereas being prepared can reduce your family's anxiety over what to do during emergencies and can increase your resiliency following a disaster. And whereas this is National Preparedness Month, may we honor all of our first responders who run toward disaster at a moment's notice. Now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Francis de Leon Sanchez and the City Council of Bell Gardens do hereby proclaim the month of September 2023 as National Preparedness Month and encourage all residents of Bell Gardens to prepare an emergency supply kit, a family emergency plan, and educate themselves about the potential disasters that could happen at any time.
Thank you. Can you please announce the next presentation?
Thanks again, Mayor. The next item is a certificate of recognition for the effort that is being put into creating and getting approval for a National Latina Physicians Day.
The City of Bell Gardens wants to present the certificate of recognition to the Latino physicians. The City of Bell Gardens City Council is proud to recognize the efforts of the Latina physicians serving the Bell Gardens community and starting a grassroots movement to get October 1st recognized as National Latina Physicians Day. The mission of NLPD is to establish October 1st as a day to celebrate Latinas physicians in the United States, which represent 6% of the physicians' workforce, while recognizing the critical shortage of Latino physicians when compared to the U.S. Latino population of 19%. Public awareness of this underrepresentation will generate systematic change and inspire the next generation of Latino physicians. The mission is further inspired by historical and existing health disparities affecting the Latino community, which include distinguished examples specific to the Latino patient population, such as non-English speaking patients and the undocumented community. Healthcare disparities in the Latino community have worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic, adding urgency to the need for Latino physicians' representation in the U.S. workforce. Beyond rising awareness of Latino and Latina physicians' representation in healthcare disparities, NLPD represents an urgent call to action for hospitals, academic medical centers, educators, and legislative leaders to incorporate structural change to improve Latino representation in the U.S. physician workforce. And I want to invite Dr. Garcia to come up and give us a few words, please, before we present this recognition.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to come here. I'm Mariela Garcia, a family medicine doctor. I work here in the community. A lot of my patients are here from Bell Gardens. The majority of my patient population is Spanish speaking. And this movement is very important to us. It was started last year by doctors Cesar Padilla and Michael Galvez, because the COVID pandemic kind of showed us the exacerbation of the inequality of health outcomes with our community and the general population. So we appreciate City Council doing this proclamation. We are asking for a lot of cities across the state, and then eventually in front of Congress to ask for this day to be recognized so that we may move forward and close the gap. And so what we're saying is necesitamos más, porque es muy importante tener el cuidado en el idioma del paciente y poder cuidar de nuestra comunidad.
Muchas gracias. If I invite you and your team to come up so we can take a picture.
Oh, it's my family, actually.
Your family, yes,
Okay.
please. We will now begin with item number 1 on the agenda. At this time, I will open public hearing at 6:16 PM. City Manager, can you please introduce this item?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor. This item is for ordinance 938. It's for exceptions to required parking. Staff's recommendation that the council conduct a public hearing, waive the full reading, and introduce the ordinance by title only. Find the proposed ordinance is exempt from CEQA. Before I turn it over to our Community Development Director, I'll just say briefly that this ordinance is in response to AB 2097 that was signed last year by the governor. The item was reviewed and recommended by the Planning Commission. And basically what it does is it allows accommodations for alternative parking types and expands allowable parking exceptions for the purpose of facilitating additional development. So with that, I will turn it over to our Community Development Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I'm going to have our city planner, Mr. Stephen Jones, present as he did with the Planning Commission.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, honorable council members. The agenda item before you is, as the city manager mentioned, to ensure consistency between the city's guiding documents to regulate development compatible with the existing patterns of neighborhoods and the state's legislation to support sustainable transportation trends. Thank you. During this brief presentation, your council will hear the background that necessitates changes in the proposed ordinance, a summary of proposed language to comply with Assembly Bill 2097, to include exceptions to the new rule and recommended actions for the next steps. City Council adopted and the state certified the housing element for the current 6th cycle housing element planning period of 2021 to 2029. And it already identified parking as solutions to barriers to housing production. The housing element calls for reform and adjustments that facilitate housing productions. Adoption of this ordinance would help fulfill that legal requirement. AB 2097 was signed into law last year, took effect January 1st, 2023, and it adds failure to comply with the new legislation to the list of violations for which the state attorney general may bring legal action. And the proposed ordinance would remove ambiguity regarding eligible housing projects and specify major public stops and transportation. The ordinance proposes that compact spaces be allowed. They are currently prohibited. Spaces for electric vehicles and bicycles would help reduce environmental impact and would be allowed as an exception to the new law. So we could require minimum required parking for electric vehicles. AB 2097 also confers the ability to impose or enforce minimum parking if evidence can be shown supporting the absence of off-street parking would have a substantial negative impact. The proposed ordinance would specify what types of evidence would qualify to establish a substantial negative impact. The city would, within 30 days of a complete application, would need to evidence that the city's ability to provide affordable housing would be impeded, and the public could provide a parking study for your consideration. The proposed ordinance is consistent with the blueprint for development in the Bell Gardens General Plan by promoting compatible and safe development policies found in the circulation, housing, and land use elements. This would reduce the oversupply of automobile parking, and less reliance on personal automobile travel would facilitate fewer vehicle miles traveled and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. On August 16th, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval after a duly noticed public hearing, public testimony, and their deliberations. So during this brief presentation, your council heard the background to support sustainable transportation trends and state and regional housing production goals, a summary of proposed language to grant exceptions to required parking and consider significant impact claims, and staff recommends your council consider the ordinance's adoption to encourage commercial growth, housing production by authorizing alternatives to minimum required parking, often seen as barriers to development. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
We'll now move to council members' questions or comments. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments?
Just to say that I am glad to see that we are working on reducing accommodations for vehicles, for cars, for gas emitting cars, and I'm very pleased to see this. We live in an area that is highly polluted by local freeway traffic. It's, there's a lot of vehicle density here, so this is a great thing. Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Thank you. We'll now open public comments for this item. City Clerk, please announce instructions for public participation.
Thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the City Council Successor Agency joint agenda for public hearing item number 1. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the City Council and Successor Agency. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, subject to callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will hear from the speakers that are in person first, and we did not receive any written communications.
Bruce A. Crow.
Good evening. Okay, Miss Councilwoman there says this is a great thing. What the state is telling you is that they're going to put you in an apartment. They're going to have more.
I'm sorry, wait 1 moment, please.
They don't
Try again.
They don't want. Can you hear me?
Yes.
They don't want you to be able to have freedom and liberty to drive in your own car, especially a gasoline powered car, but you can live in one forcibly in their apartments because they're not going to have any cars for you. And this is the spawn of what's called the 15-minute city. You should reject this because this is nothing but fascism and totalitarian dictatorship. This is the first phase of it right here. And Miss Gomez says it's a great thing. She's happy that you're going to be stuck in your apartment and never be able to get in your car and go drive to work. They'll decide how far you can go in the public transportation, taking away your freedom and liberty. All the meanwhile, they're telling you they're protecting you. And then they're telling you that they're going to reduce the greenhouse gases. Well, the onus is to the affirmative, is there was never presented how much the greenhouse gases were going to be reduced by these plans. It was never mentioned. And it still hasn't been mentioned. It wasn't mentioned at the Planning Commission last week either. So the onus is on you to prove your point that this is necessary to take away people's freedom and liberty. What builds a solid, durable, safe environment and culture and society are fossil fuels. And the usage of those fossil fuels by us as individuals and moving into the middle class. Not being stuck, having the government tell you what kind of little electric car that you can drive if we allow you to do it. If we allow you to do it. You want your freedom and liberty. This is nothing but the old Soviet Union type stuff going on here, or Nazi Germany. That's what totalitarian liberal Democrats are all about. And they're happy with it. They're really happy with it. And I think you all are happy with it too. And you should reject this. Thank you.
Do we have any online comments?
We do have one raised hand. Let me see if it's for this item. Thank you for unmuting yourself. Zoom ID at EDRIN, Edrin. Did you want to speak on public hearing item number 1?
Yes, and I want to kind of address what the whole issue is with the, and this is more of Councilmember Gomez's comments about EVs being basically more green. I think that the concept is the concept of the manufacturing of EVs is very lost on people because mining the heavy metals for the EVs is actually very, very capital and resource intensive. The lithium and whatever other metals that's used for the battery, and not even withstanding that, but imagine this, because there seems to be this conception that fossil fuels are are going to go away. Fossil fuels are in paint, the phone you have, the flag that's in the background, your microphone, your seat, the treatment of the leather of your seat, your glasses, everything. And it's basically just to say that EVs are not the panacea that some of these laws seem to want to make us think. And as far as the 15-minute city, that's kind of on going on the conspiracy theories, but there is something to be said about forcing people to abandon ICE cars for EVs, because the fact is that EVs right now, it's really just an upper middle class anemone. You don't see charging centers on every single corner. You don't see, when you see somebody making minimum wage driving an EV car, then yeah, it might be beneficial to pass all this type of legislation. But as it stands right now, your average person isn't really going to afford an EV, especially considering their car prices. So it's just something to think about, especially with adopting EVs and going along with all that hype. It's really not going to it's barely going to make a dent in global greenhouse emissions, considering transportation, and if you guys look up what the bulk of the causes of greenhouse gas emissions are, you would be very surprised. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last public comment.
If there's no objections by members of the City Council Successor Agency, I will now close public participation for non-agenda items. If there are no further, are there any questions or comments from the City Council at this time? If there are no further City Council questions or comments, I will now close the public hearing at 6:30 p.m. May I have a motion to waive the full reading and introduction of ordinance number 938 and find the ordinance exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act?
I'll move.
I have a motion by Councilmember Barsina. May I get a second?
I'll second.
And I have a second by Councilmember Gomez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barsina?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Yes.
And Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. We will now move to public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Public participation is now open. City Clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
Thank you. The mayor, members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items not listed on the City Council Successor Agency Joint Agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, subject to an overall 30-minute. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature and select unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber, and we did not receive any written communication.
Bruce A. Crow.
All right, in the words of Pauly Shore, I'm back. Quick note, Girl Scouts, good to see. I hope they're not confused. They are born with an XX chromosome. Boys are born with an XY chromosome. XX is the dominant of the two, by the way. Some people don't seem to think that. They think women are the weaker sex of the two, but XX is more dominant. Just something to take note of, and at least they know the difference, that they're not boys and they are Girl Scouts. I want to talk about the oath of allegiance that people swear to when they come into this country to be an American and not to bring their culture and their baggage with them to this culture. You are to assimilate into American society. And that means, yes, making the effort to speak the de facto official language, English, to participate in American society. Freedom of speech, being endowed by our Creator, inalienable natural rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't get that anywhere else in the world. You only get that here, and you need to assimilate into that. Now, if you refuse to assimilate into that, then maybe you ought not come here. But if you want to and do it legally and properly, you're welcome. You're welcome. But let's not have these Hispanic months and, Black History Month and German History Month. I don't care about the German culture. I want American culture. We want freedom and liberty. And you just voted against all of that, because you are totalitarian liberal Democrats. You are the party of slavery. You are the party of the Confederacy. And you are performing your duties for the white liberal elitists like Gavin Newsom in California. Now, I want to mention a thing here in the Oath of Allegiance. The first paragraph tells you, I do solemnly swear that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince or potentate, state, or sovereignty of whom or which I have heretofore or previously been a subject or citizen. So when you swear to that, you are leaving all of your culture behind. And that's a big step. That says a lot about a person, to come in and assimilate into American society. Think about that. Thank you very much.
Rogelio Rodriguez.
No, we do not have anyone virtually raising their hand.
If there's no objection by the members, I will now close public participation. Public participation is now open for items listed on the City Council Successor Agency Joint Agenda. City Clerk, please announce instructions for public participation.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present, and we did not receive any written communication.
Bruce Pro.
All right, I'm back. I live in Downey. That's all right. We have somebody running for a special election in District 1. He doesn't live in District 1 either. So, but he's in with the crowd that wants to bring in the pot shops. And of course, they deny it. But we know how you all are here with pot shops. But I want to talk about number 16, sidewalk vending update. Now, this issue was vetted thoroughly in Downey about a year ago. And I've been hearing a little bit from the people, the brick and mortar businesses here. They don't like it. Some people like the street vendors, but nobody seems to know who issues the permits for the street vendors. There's 2 types of permits, one where they have enclosed packages and then the other where they cut the food separately. And it's not the state that issues the permits. It's not the cities. It is the county. That's who issues the permits. And I was just blown away when we found out how many permits were issued in a 2-year period. You'd be surprised. How many would you think? Maybe 10,000, 15,000? LA County is a big place. There was only 1 permit issued. 1. And I notice on your chart, you have 3 here for the past 4 years. Now, the reason being is nobody's going to pay for a permit because they're up to $700 a permit. And nobody has any money for that. So the issue is, what are you going to do with all these people? Can you go ahead and issue a citation to them? Is that your job? Not necessarily. It looks like it's the county's business to take care of that. But they only issued 1 permit. And I almost couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But then I started thinking, yeah, I can believe it. There's so much corruption and grift going on with our elected officials and stuff. Some of their friends are out on the streets, or they want to grandstand that they feel sorry for people just trying to make a living. That's not it. Defend your brick and mortar businesses. They're doing things properly in a decent way to create a decent society, not just willy-nilly on the street. It's a sad show, but I'm sorry, the sidewalk vendors shouldn't be there. Thank you.
Rogelio Rodriguez.
That
We do have virtual, one person who has their hand virtually raised. Zoom ID Edrin, if you would please select the microphone icon to unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, yes. So I actually, that gentleman from Downey, I have to praise what he said. That boomer from Downey. He actually mentioned, first of all, that Democrats are actually the party of slavery. It was actually a Democrat who actually ruled on the Plessy v. Ferguson case that said that put out the separate but equal clause, basically, white white bars, colored bars, where they did not allow people of color to enter in certain establishments. That being said, as far as and I want to touch on the food vendor issue. You know, it's actually very smart that you guys eliminate that, unless they're licensed and collect taxes for the city, because considering that most of your income comes from a casino, it's actually in your best interest to diversify that revenue stream. And having marijuana coming into the city, the last gentleman who spoke, he doesn't seem to understand that a city without a diversified revenue stream is not sustainable. So by adding in some dispensaries, you can collect more taxes to provide services for the people. I mean, do they like the Bell Gardens, what is it, the Bell Gardens trolley? Do they like park maintenance, road maintenance? Do they like all that stuff? Because if there isn't enough tax revenue, he's not going to get that. Instead of complaining about parking, he might start complaining about there not being enough police because the city doesn't have enough funds to support that. So it really is in the best interest for the city to support most of their brick and mortar vendors, to the businesses that pay taxes and have licenses. And this whole thing, this whole thing of support street vendors, which, yeah, it's great, but if you're going to use public property, don't be filthy. And as we see on some posts, that there are some pictures where there's grease all over the sidewalk, which, as we're talking about the environment, that's terrible for the environment, especially when you pour your grease down the sewers. It goes to the ocean. It's terrible. So yeah, you guys completely made the right choice in eliminating the vendors, and you guys made the right choice in letting dispensaries be open because, again, it's legal no matter what NIMBYs want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
That
then,
that was the last caller we had virtually participating.
if there's no objection by the members, I will now close public participation. City Manager, will you please give your report?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor. Just want to recognize again, back on Monday, September 4th, the city celebrated Labor Day, the efforts of organized labor throughout history. Also want to mention the police department's been busy with certain events. They've had a catalytic converter event on Saturday, September 2nd. They had a neighborhood watch event, a business watch event. Also, over the last heat wave that we've had the cooling centers open. We have the cooling centers open more in the month of September than we did in the month of July or August, June, July, or August this year. I think we had them open about 7 days. Also want to mention important to residents, our rental assistance application program is open right now through September 5th. So if you apply, you can receive up to $1,500 rental relief. If there are more applications than there are funds, there will be a lottery process to make a selection, as has been done through past rental relief programs. Also, still want to mention every Friday is our farmers market. It's now at the Casa Leaders Furniture Store in their parking lot. And also on Fridays, that's at 11 a.m. Also Fridays at 11 a.m. At Veterans Park is our art and yard sale. So you can pretty conveniently walk between both of those events on the same day. Also want to mention coming up, one of the big 6 to 8 events that the city has every year. This coming Saturday, September 16th, is the Gritos Independence Day, celebrating Mexican independence from Spain. It's going to be from 6 to 9 p.m. At Veterans Park. And there'll be folklorico performances, banda, arts, games, activities. It's free. There'll be food trucks there as well. The last 2 items I just want to mention that are coming up is our monthly rent stabilization and tenant eviction protection workshop. We have one for property owners on Tuesday, September 19th at 4 p.m. And we have one for tenants on Wednesday, September 20th, also at 4 p.m. And most of these items can be found also if you do a search of Bell Gardens calendar. If you Google search that, click on it, you can look at all of these events and activities that are available. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now move to consent calendar. Does any member of this council successor agency wish to pull an item for separate discussion? I'm hearing none. I will now call for a motion to approve item numbers 2 to 12 of the consent calendar. May I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Councilmember Barsina. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Gomez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the council and successor agency, Barsina,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 13?
Thank you, Mayor. First item we have is the local commission's appointment list. So at this time, it's staff recommendation if the council could please review this appointments list and by motion either remove commissioners and or make appointments to the posted vacancies. Thank you.
Does any member of the council wish to make any changes? I would like to appoint Oscar Bordo to the Planning Commission. May I make a motion to appoint him? Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Chavez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barsina,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. Any additional changes at this time? City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 14?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor. The next item is for a couple of items here. It's actually an approval of a professional services agreement for a community engagement tool. We'd also call that a city mobile app. Hyla Soto, our assistant to the city manager, has a presentation that he will provide to talk about the process. And then we have the prospective vendor that will go through and show about a 10-minute demo of the actual app. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hyla Soto. Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. So thank you, Mike, for the quick presentation. So I'll just do a quick introduction of what the community engagement tool request is for. Community engagement tools come in different guises with different options for engaging communities and stakeholders within a jurisdiction. Currently, the city of Bell Gardens utilizes the city website, bellgardens.org, through email inquiries, the telephone, the general line, and social media accounts. And that varies from this Instagram account, Facebook account, X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Threads. Some of the common services requested by resident stakeholders and the public in general include requests for trash, street repairs, graffiti, cleanups, program registrations, and permits. So community engagement tools vary based on federal, state, and local agencies to encourage public participation. Many local agencies are actually already using mobile city apps to engage their constituents. And mobile city apps are just simply a popular form of engagement that are used as smartphones become more plentiful amongst the public and as a preferred use for consumers. So typically, mobile app vendors are responsible for the cloud storage of the app. And then the app is actually provided on multiple app stores, including the Google Play Store and the App Store, Apple App Store. And the mobile app vendors will be responsible typically for security and technical updates as the app evolves. So a request for proposals was released in January, and after not receiving sufficient qualified proposals, another request for proposals was sent out last month. And the request was to implement a mobile app for the city that's cloud-based with the customer request management, a public-facing web portal as well as an internal-facing administrative dashboard. The request was for it to be highly customizable to meet the city's needs. And this will allow the public to report issues with description, photos, and map pinpoint. And in case of a resident or a stakeholders doesn't have the app or doesn't have time to download it, then the front desk staff is able to input that information and run it through the customer request management software. 3 proposals were submitted, and they were submitted by GoGov, Civic Plus, and Tatum Games. The cost for the proposals, and this is based up to 5 years. Civic Plus and GoGov are the more established players in the mobile app arena, and Tatum Games has no experience producing any civic apps for local, federal, or state agencies. Staff is recommending for the city council to approve and proceed with the GoGov proposal. GoGov has over 100 California cities and counties as clients already, and over 300 nationwide. The fiscal impact will be for the first year for the implementation. There are no upfront costs with GoGov, so the first year payment will be a simple $24,180, and so an appropriation will need to be approved with the request, as well as should the request be approved, then and the $24,180 will be annually added to the fiscal year budget process. The term of the agreement is for 3 years plus an additional or optional 2 one-year extensions. So the total cost for a 5-year agreement would be $120,900. It is staff's recommendation that the city council adopt the attached resolution and authorize the city manager to execute a professional service agreement with GoGov for the city mobile app, subject to approval by the city attorney. I'm actually not going to hand over the presentation over to Kevin Strauss, the GoGov VP of Regional Sales, and he'll be doing a demonstration. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mrs. Mayor, members of the council. Thanks so much for having me. I'm just going to get my screen share going here. Here we go. Great. So yeah, my name is Kevin Strauss. I work here at GoGov, and I just wanted to give kind of a high-level run-through of what you can expect with the solution, and then leave some time if anyone on the panel has any questions. Can you all see my screen with like a phone moving around on it? No? Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Oh, I see. Hang on one sec. I see what it did. I just need the whole screen. Here we go. All right, take 2. How about now? Big cell phone in the middle of the screen? Okay. So yeah. So as Highlights was kind enough to mention, GoGov as a company, we've been around since 2006. We have over 350 municipal customers around the country. We're actually originally founded in California, in the LA area. LA County alone, I believe 25 cities use the solution that's being proposed today. and well over 100 cities and counties throughout the state of California. And I only mention that just to say we have relevant, state experience. Of course, each city is unique, but you definitely see common generalities and trends, in the same county, in the same state. And really, for this product, the focal point from a resident's perspective is going to be the branded mobile app. So what we're going to do is build a City of Bell Gardens branded app. Branded meaning you get to name it whatever you want, and then that's what gets promoted to your residents. So they should have no idea who GoGov is. We want the city to get all of the branding. So just a few examples. This is the city of Orange, California. They call their app Orange 24/7. This is South Pasadena. They call their app My South Pass. This is the city of Lakewood. They call their app Lakewood Connect, and so on and so forth. So we'll work with you to come up with the name that you'd like, get a graphics that you'd like. And to me, there's a basic 3-part story that we'd like to help you tell to the resident, which is, hey, take a couple of seconds, go throw the new City of Bell Gardens app on your phone. And number one, get all sorts of useful city information at your fingertips. And that's with these different buttons. You'll notice all these apps have different numbers of buttons with different names and different icons with them. There is a big level of customization that we'll do for the city to put content here that you want. Basically, the idea is to take pre-existing web pages that you already have and extract them from your website and make them readily available for that more highly desired, highly trafficked information. Things like your city council agendas and minutes. When I hit this, just loads the web page where they have all the video and minutes and agendas hosted. Or if you use a third-party vendor for like an online bill pay, here in the city of Lakewood, they have a button that says online bill pay. Shortcuts me to the vendor page to do the online billing. So we're going to highlight a bunch of really useful city information with the buttons. The second thing we're going to be able to do with this is deliver real-time push alerts and updates for things going on in the city. And in the sake of time, we're not going to write one and send one right now during this session. But on the staff side, you'll be able to dictate which staff can create and send content. And then to each member of the community that has the app on their phone, they'll get it in a real-time push alert. So what you're seeing on my screen here are real customers. This is Lafayette, California, and things that they send out. The council meeting packet is ready. We're doing some street sweeping. There's an emergency water shutoff. There's a water line break. There's fireworks happening. There's a senior activity, a committee meeting. So it's a lot of this everyday stuff that we find members of the community really do want to know about, and would be nice to have it delivered to your phone. Things outside of emergencies, all this, Mr. O'Kelly earlier mentioned a bunch of awesome events coming up. All great things that you could be pushing out through here to let residents know what's going on. So that's the second reason they might download this. But then the most kind of substantial piece of this offering is the service request management. And the idea with the service request management is to give residents an easier way to submit issues rather than having to call or email you. And then maybe most importantly, a staff-facing software to more easily track and manage the items that come in, account for how long they've taken, when they've been completed, run reports, get data and analytics out of there that are useful for the city. I do always like to mention in the beginning, a concern for a lot of folks with this product is, hey, if we roll this out, it's just going to be, a drastic increase in the number of requests. And of course, we're not upset at more community engagement, but one of the main goals is merely to shift the traffic. Think about residents in our personal lives, right? When we want to order something, we open our phone, hit it on Amazon, we get an alert when the order is confirmed and an alert when the order is delivered. So we want to provide the same type of service in a municipal setting. So instead of calling you to let you know that I see some tall grass and weeds, or there's a broken street sign, or there's a big pothole in the street, I could open the app and hit this start request button. And what we'll see here are the different types of issues that you as a city make available, common things that residents report to you. Everything here is just an example. And as a resident, I kind of pick the thing I want to report, and it's a very simple 2-step process. Step 1, do you have any pictures? I could say no. I could open my camera and start snapping. More commonly, what we see is people have already taken the photos. So they grab them out of their camera roll, and then the app pulls the location right off of the GPS coordinates in the photo and goes, that's where this issue is located. So now as a staff, if I'm the department that gets this, I know exactly where this thing is. And if for some reason my photo didn't have those coordinates, I could always look at this map and drag and drop the pin or type in the address if that's easier. And we can also enforce a boundary. So we're ensuring that we're only getting requests from within the area that we actually service. Once we put that in, the next thing we'll do is fill out whatever information you ask me to fill out based on the type of thing that I'm submitting and hit submit. And the nice part about this from a resident's perspective, I can always track the status of my issue using this track request button. So these are all the different items I put in over time. Here's the one I just entered. It's currently in an open status. And as the staff will actually work on this and update it as they go through the process of fixing the issue, this will actually automatically notify the resident and keep them abreast of what's going on so they can rest assured that, their issue is being handled. So that's the submission of an issue through the app. Now, to Highlight's point, there's another channel of input which is going to live here on your website. Under this I want to, there's going to have maybe like a button that says report a concern or report an issue. And when clicked on, it'll stay on your website, but instead of seeing whatever content would be in the middle here, we're going to give you something called an iframe, which would just live right in your webpage. This is the one we do for the city of Placentia, California. And it's just merely another avenue for residents to be able to easily report things. We love the app. We think the app is great. We want you to promote it and get lots of downloads, but it should definitely not be a prerequisite to be able to communicate with the city. So we want to make sure that if someone visits your webpage, they'll have that covered there as well. And this is just simply my ability to go ahead and submit an issue through the web, and it would look something like this. Very simple, very straightforward. Now, the way this is ideally going to get set up is that based on the type of thing being reported, we've already predetermined which staff are responsible for handling that, so that we're routing these issues directly to the folks that can handle them. And that's where the staff will pick this up in the staff-facing software to track and manage the work. And I don't want to get too into the weeds here. I'm happy to do any follow-up sessions if anyone likes. But the general concept is a very simple web-based software where I can easily see a screen like this, which is a list of open issues. Which issues I see are based on my role within the city. So it's a rights or permissions-based program. They all have due dates based on service level goals, so we can closely track the amount of time they're taking us. And then I have what I would call like the detail of an open item or my, oops, I hit the wrong thing there, or my open work order. And the open work order is going to allow me to do things like view the resident's service history. So for example, if a resident happens to call and ask about items that they've submitted, if I can locate their item and pull it up, I can easily not only help them out with the thing they're calling for, but any previously submitted items quickly and easily as well. We get the address where the issue is located. We get service histories by location. So I can spot trends. Maybe I didn't notice we've done a bunch of like, road patching work here and we want to try something else. Or there's been a lot of illegal dumping at this address. We'd like to maybe loop in the PD. We can also have all sorts of statuses so you can sort and filter your work. So that, for example, say you have a status called scheduled. Well, we can make it so when you set it to that and save it, it automatically sends a push alert and email update to the resident that submitted it, letting them know, hey, your item's been scheduled for service. We'll let you know when it's completed. And then ultimately, when the item's done, there's a section here called reason closed, which is text that will go back to the resident to tell them why we're considering this issue closed out. So that ultimately, when the issue is closed, a push alert will go to the resident. They'll tap on that. It brings them right back into the app, right back to this screen here, where I can clearly see the issue is closed with a nice explanation explaining to me, why the city is considering this issue closed out. And so we're going to work with them on that. Another thing I'd like to quickly touch on, like Highlights mentioned, is call takers. So if someone does still call the city, we're going to train the staff on how to input the issues right here into the software. So even if I call with an issue, if I want to provide my email address, I can still get all the status updates that we just discussed. But if I don't want to, that's fine as well. We can rest assured knowing the items going into the system, it will be tracked. If there's no way it's going to fall through the cracks, it'll be assigned to someone. So my point is, even though we're adding avenues for submission and more digital options, we're definitely not taking away. Those that still want to walk into City Hall or give us a phone call, we'll make sure that they're well taken care of as well. And then really the last piece I want to touch on, and then I'd love to open it up for questions, is going to be the reporting tool, which is going to be the ability in our software to aggregate all the information that's come through the system. I want to see how many potholes we've completed, in the last year or 6 weeks. Where were they located? How long did they take us? Who worked on them? These are all things that we're going to be able to pull right out of the reporting tool, which is going to definitely make it easier for us to hopefully take the work that we're already doing today, put it in a format that allows us to sort and filter, and then as a city do better resource planning, demand planning, resource allocation, and so on and so forth. So it's a really nice suite of products to take a process that's already happening as we speak today, put a little bit of structure around it, and then let both sides reap the benefits. And by both sides, I mean us as residents that are submitting things, so we get a really nice white glove level of service, and then for the staff that work on these as well to try to make that as easy as possible. And I'll leave it at that for now and open it up for mayor and members of the council. If you all have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments at this time?
I actually do have a question in terms of language access. Are we talking about English only at this point for the app?
In the app, that's correct, ma'am. App language translation is not so simple. It is something that's on our radar, especially given our concentration of customers in certain areas. But I can tell you that here on the piece that will live in your website, it fully supports Google Translate, where you have like a couple of hundred language options. And what we've seen some cities do is, because of the way our app works with the buttons on the app, you could actually create a button on the home screen of your app right here that's written in Spanish, for example, that says submit an issue, and it will simply load this page, which is mobile responsive, meaning if I resize this right now, let me just get this going. You could see that everything resizes accordingly. I don't have to be on a computer for this. It will just load for me and allow me to do the issue through the app, in air quotes, even though it's technically through the web, in a different language. So it's a pretty solid workaround for the time being, as we work to try to make it so we can just hit a button and flip the whole app into a couple of different languages.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Kevin. And I do have a question in regards to the web integration. I know you mentioned that there is an option to embed an iframe. However, I'm wondering if there's also an option to run the app entirely through the browser, or is that something that you guys offer? For example, if there's a city that doesn't have their own website, do you also provide sort of like an HTML based web front for the application, as opposed to them having to go to the app store and download the app?
Well, Highways, if I'm understanding the question correctly, that's what you're looking at here. This is a fully web-based version of the request submission software, which can be iframe to live in your page, which we definitely suggest. But you can also direct link to this as well. So if that's something you wanted to link to from your website, either way, the user would need some sort of URL. In our opinion, the odds of them at least getting to the city's website first are higher than having like a favorited random URL that would take you directly to this issue right here. So I'll show you, like, the iframe component is merely something that's windowed inside your site, but it is its own standalone web page. So that would look something like this. Sorry, I'm just kind of typing and talking at the same time. So like, here's like my demo site iframe. This is its own existing web page. So if you wanted to give out the link to this, sir, you certainly could. But to me, I feel like it's better branding overall for the city to just let it live in your website and give that link out so that all the links are Bell Gardens, Bell Gardens. But that's how that works at this time.
Thank you for that. And just to follow up with that question, is the part that you mentioned right now that you were showing on the browser, I forgot the specific name. It's all new terminology to me, but does that contain the entirety of your web application, or does it just contain the reporting portion of it?
It's a great question. So it's just, well, it's both. So the web application, the app itself, sir, these buttons are your web content. So in theory, like, all this stuff is living on your website already. So we're not going to re-aggregate it, right? Because it's already on your site. So what that leaves us with is two options. Number one, the notification. So to get a push alert, you would need to have the app. However, our system also delivers via email, which would be the main option for, I think, the situation you're describing. Hey, I don't want to download the app, but I want to get alerted for events and things like that. There is an email distribution, as well as shared to Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then the only other part of this would be the request submission, which also includes a knowledge base. That's represented here as well. So like, Placentia actually does a really great job of this. Like, they have a topic for business license application and fees. That's not a thing they're taking through our software. It's a nice article of information they provide because they think residents want to know about it. They link me right to their business license page. So the frame contains that as well. Not only the request submission, but also the full articles of information that y'all might choose to represent on there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Kevin. Very informative. My question is relating to attachments. Sometimes in our webpage, we have, an application, we have, information for parking, whatnot, right? If you want to have your street as a parking district. Do we, through the app, can people get the attachments as well?
Are you saying like for submitting an application for something?
So yeah. So for example, like if I want to learn about parking, or there's other attachments within the websites, and each of them has their it'll like open another tab and it'll make you download a file on the web page. Does
I see.
the app support program? Does the app support that?
It does. And these buttons, so like when you're doing what you're describing, it's actually opening a PDF in a browser. So if you wanted to have a button that says parking information, it'll just, when I hit this, it's just going to load a page that's the PDF. It could be multiple pages, as many pages as you want. And that's what would load there. Or my best practice for that, sir, because you're going to have so many different departments with so much information, would be to use the knowledge base concept, which is to have a topic called parking information, just like here in Placentia, the business license stuff. They don't want to actually take that through here. So when someone searches for it, though, in the resident help center, what we're pitching this as, they find it, but then it links me to the business license page where I can really dive into the details and get into all the nitty gritty. So that's where the knowledge base comes in. We want residents to search for stuff, and it might be something where I snap a photo and send you a picture of what's broken or out of place. But it could, to your point, be, hey, this is just something I'm curious about. I need a little information and maybe to be pointed in the right direction. So that would be supported here as well.
I think that's a perfect example, because on that, once you click that link right there, it sends you to it says right there, business license application PDF. That's what I was, if it would redirect you. But the way I'm understanding the app, essentially a lot of it is going to be hyperlinks to the web pages themselves.
In terms of the buttons that you're seeing here on the home screen,
yes,
that is correct. For a vast majority of our customers, that's what they choose to do here. The main reason being, it's tough enough to manage that content in one place, which is the website. There's a lot of information there. So you don't want to create too many secondary places to manage the information. We do have a few what we call native applets, things that you would create the content in our system. For example, this is Ranchos Palos Verdes, California. They do like a little department directory of phone numbers that are click to dial. That was set up in our system. Easy to manage though, almost to set it and forget it. Same idea with like they list out where their parks are and where their nature walking trails are. I could see not only a listing of them, but I could see geographically where they are in the city and pick one and get like pictures, description of services, hours, location. That's a native function. Another popular one would be like highlighting people. A lot of customers will highlight the current mayor and council, names, pictures, bios, contact info. So there's a few native things, but to your point, Mayor Pro Tem, you're spot on. A majority of our customers, for a majority of their buttons, are simply shortcutting to existing web pages, with the general concept being that you and I, being involved in government a lot, we probably visit this page often and could navigate it very quickly. And it's a very nice website. But because of what it's supposed to be, there's just a lot of stuff on here. And that's not just your city, that's any city. Because in theory, I should find out anything related to the city somehow or somewhere on this page. Think of an app as a boiled down user experience. The city basically saying, hey, of all this stuff on here, we've aggregated the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever number it happens to be, things that we think people frequently want to access the most, essentially to save you time and say, we pop those right down in front of you with a nice clear label and a little icon to match, so that when you go ahead and tap it, it pulls that up. Like here in RPV, they use a vendor for parking reservations. So they just created a button called parking, and boom, it loads their vendor's portal where you can reserve and pay for your parking.
Thank you. Another question, it's about customer service. So for whatever reason, if our residents are having trouble with accessing the app, if in a case of our staff, we're having some difficulties too. And are you guys 24/7? Who is there a number we can call, or how is that?
Yep, there's a number. So we find mostly, so like we do a lot of work to hide the point of some of the slides highlights has. Part of what you're paying us for is we stay in front of all the stuff in the app stores. The apps are always available. We're doing all the updates, making sure everything works. We do get some resident phone calls. Like, they're welcome to call us. Our support team will help them out. We find most of our support lies in dealing with our municipality staffs. Hey, I forgot how to take this issue and send it to someone else. Or, hey, I closed this one, I didn't mean to. How do I reopen it? Like different things like that. But should a resident have questions, you guys could list our support number, on your site, and we'd be happy to help those folks out.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great questions.
Any additional questions or comments?
Actually, unless Madam Mayor, unless you have any comments or questions, I do have something I wanted to bring up. I did talk to Mike in regards to this item and how it relates to the ad hoc committee that we had formed. I believe it was me and the mayor at that time in regards to the app. Unfortunately, it's been very busy with a lot of issues here in the city, good and bad, and just work as usual. But I want to make sure that we get a chance to meet. I think we haven't really had a chance to schedule not even one meeting for the ad hoc. And as excited as I am to really find out about, for example, the CRM element of this particular proposal, which is, I think is great. It has a lot of potential to centralize the communications between our employees and the public. I still would like to have the opportunity to dive into it a little bit deeper, at least before we make a decision. This is a $125,000 decision. So I would rather, if I have the support of the mayor and the council, maybe table this for the next meeting, and meanwhile just schedule one meeting with the ad hoc so that we can really dive in. I feel like there's so much potential here, and I generally feel good about it, but I don't think personally I'm ready to dive into it and just get that agreement. But if the city manager has any comments in regards to our discussion, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, first I would just acknowledge, I think, we do have an ad hoc setup that did not meet. I think we talked about meeting, and then we put out the RFP and had some issues with the RFP. So from a timing perspective, this really doesn't slow things down. I mean, it's 2 weeks for, a product that I think once we have in place, we'll have for years. So, from the staff perspective, Hylas and myself have talked about it. We don't see any issues from our end as far as tabling the item and bringing it back again. We schedule an ad hoc for probably early next week, if possible, so we could dive in deeper and then have it back on the agenda on September 25th. Our ultimate goal, since we're getting close to the year end, this is the time where you start looking to see what can we get done and accomplished prior to the year end. So that's our goal at the moment, but I don't think this slows it down in any appreciable manner.
I do have a question. Is there like some type of expiration on the proposal, on the bid that was given to us by the group here?
Hylas, did we have we've got Kevin here as well. Kevin's gonna make one up now.
We're good for another 2 weeks. That's no worries at all. I would also mention to the council in this decision to table or not that there are many phased approaches to this as well, which is something I talked briefly with Hylas about, which is just because you say, yes, let's do it. Sir, we do unlimited remote training, unlimited support for the life of working together. If you think it's a good idea, I think what the extra couple weeks would do as we look at year end, your average implementation time, about 6 to 8 weeks, just gives another 2 weeks of padding there. As we approach the busier end of the year time, there are a number of rollout options that we would love to explore with the staff once we have an agreement in place, which include things like a soft rollout. Hey, we're actually going to go ahead and launch the staff-facing software, train the staff on how to use it, take the existing traffic that comes in, phone calls, emails, get those logged, make sure everyone's comfortable. Then Mr. O'Kelly mentioned a number of events coming up. Maybe the launch of the app and the piece on the website could coincide with that. So whether you table or not, I did just want to mention that there are a lot of options when it comes to rollout. And because the number is a true software as a service number in terms of how we price and package the product, there's no like, okay, if we say yes today, now the clock starts, we've got to get the trainings in. Like, we're here to work with you guys as little or as much as you need and to condense or elongate go lives based on city goals and milestones that are important to you. But no, the quote will not expire in 2 weeks, where it would definitely stand behind the price that we provided.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So did you want to make a motion to table this item instead of approving it today?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to table and bring it back at the next council meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Barcenas, second by Councilmember Gomez. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Yes.
And Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 15?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor. This next item was a request from Mayor Pro Tem Chavez a couple months ago. I think he talked with other colleagues at other cities regarding an issue that they were looking at and asked if we could take a look at it. Our Community Development Department took a look at this issue and has brought it forth here as a discussion item. It's regarding really addressing vacant and or abandoned land that may exist in a city, obviously in this case in the city of Bell Gardens, to look at ways of creating a registration fee so we know who owns the property, we can hold them accountable for taking care of it, and also to help incentivize getting that property developed, whether it's residential or commercial. With that, I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gus Romo.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. This ordinance was researched over the last, I would say 2 to 3 months. We looked at several cities here in our own Southeast Los Angeles region. We found that some cities are looking into it, but haven't actually adopted an ordinance. The cities like Bellflower, Cudahy, and Huntington Park. So we went a little bit further and looked for cities that have actually adopted ordinances. And this is what we came up with. And again, this presentation is to get direction from you. This is a receive and file report. And if you want to provide further direction, you may. If not, then you just receive and file. So what we found is that like many cities, not just in California, but throughout the nation, Bell Gardens has challenges with abandoned properties. And we're talking about not just abandoned buildings, but also vacant land, growing weeds, staying there for a long time without being developed. And of course, that often, provides blight, increases, crime because they're attractive nuisances in a sense. And we found that counties and cities alike have both adopted similar programs. They're called vacant and abandoned property registration programs. So when we look at buildings that are not being maintained, an ordinance like this gives us the ability to monitor closely by having property owners register their property, paying an annual fee, and also paying for inspections if needed. So when our code enforcement officers actually go out there and have to cite, that can be paid for by the property owner based on any type of citations that we issue. So looking at California law, state law authorizes municipalities to determine and create provisions to regulate public nuisances. And a well-written ordinance holds these property owners accountable. We also have to keep in mind, we have our general plan, which identifies goals and objectives for the city to prosper, our economic growth, our housing, and so forth. And our most recent housing element update has provisions in it to make sure that we maintain our properties. So what happens with these vacancies? How do they happen? Well, for one thing, property transfers sometimes happen for tax purposes, and properties get passed on from one to another. There's also financial issues that people get into. Absentee and disinterested owners. Sometimes you'll have people that inherit properties. They don't know what to do with it, so they just sit on them. And also lack of communication of inventory, between owners. And of course, death. That's probably one that you see more often where people don't find out, there's no inheritance and so forth. So through registration, an ordinance would help collect fees and again, assist our code enforcement officers, leading property owners to be incentivized to make those improvements. Nobody wants to be paying an annual fee just to have their property sitting there. They want to make sure that these properties are useful to them. Of course, without any incentive, sometimes owners just sit on them. So the impacts of abandoned property, as we all know, blight can occur. If not monitored and addressed, you see old buildings that are graffitied, nobody goes in there, so nobody knows it exists. Sometimes, again, vandals can go in there and they can also become homeless encampments. And overall, this can lead to a decline in property values. Okay, so we want people to invest in the properties here in Bell Gardens. And oftentimes when you see abandoned properties that aren't being taken care of, investor comes in, they'll take a look at your neighborhoods and they'll decide, hey, is this a good place to invest? The other thing that we looked at is the option of a vacancy tax. So this actually, it says state of California, but there's, looks like my, my updated PowerPoint did not make it in here. This should say city of San Francisco. So the city of San Francisco adopted Proposition M. This was in November of 2022. And that is going to become effective in January of 2024. So the city of San Francisco, in passing this empty homes tax, Proposition M, what they call, they're able to apply this to buildings. And again, this is for single family I'm sorry, 3 or more units. So it doesn't apply to commercial. This is strictly for residential that they did this. Also, the city of Oakland did something similar. This was back in 2018. Oakland voters approved Measure W. It's called the Oakland Vacant Property Tax. Establishes an annual property tax between 3,000 to 6,000 on a property, depending on the property itself. And it could be both residential and commercial properties. So for Measure W, property is deemed vacant if it is in use less than 50 days of the calendar year and does not qualify for any exemptions. So what they list as exemptions, I've got listed here. Sometimes there's financial hardships, also very low income or senior housing that's low income. If the owner can demonstrate a hardship that's unrelated to personal finances, and other exceptional circumstances that the ordinance outlines. So again, you can see here disabilities, maybe they're in active construction and they've just been extending their building permits. So as long as they're moving forward, that's what the city wants, right? Ultimately, we just don't want them to be stagnant. So in conclusion,
Gus, just to slow it down to, just to, I think, kind of establish the 2 routes that Gus is talking about. The first one is an ordinance-based fee. So the fee, we have to do a fee study. The amount of the fee should equal the cost of the work or services that are performed to keep the registration going, to send notices out, things of that nature. The tax, on the other hand, is different. If the tax were to be approved, the level of effort does not, like in this case, City of Oakland, it doesn't necessarily cost them $3,000 or $6,000 per parcel to register. They're able to use those funding for other purposes, assuming that it was approved by the voters, which it was. So I believe the money is pooled up and then it's used for other housing programs. So rental assistance, affordable housing, things of that nature. So those are just to distinguish between the two. The first one, by ordinance, that some cities locally have adopted, would generally cover the cost of registering and tracking these types of properties. The second approach that would require a voter measure, you could actually define a dollar amount. And if the voters were to approve it, that money would become available for potentially for other housing issues.
thank you, Mike. Yes. And this could be a 2-phased approach. You could start it off with a registration program. And when elections come around, put this on the ballot measure. And again, this is what we're proposing right now is really to jumpstart this and be able to start a cost study and look to see if an ordinance is already in place. By the time the measure comes around, that could be either replacing it or doing it in conjunction. And I'd like to ask our city attorney if this would be something that the ordinance later on could be amended, or if it would be a completely different ordinance. Susie?
Oh, thank you. It is depending on the ordinance and the language, it is something that could be amended, but it depends on the route and the direction of the council.
Thank you.
And Gus, I think also just to help define this for the council and for people that are listening, this probably is obviously important in certain cities that maybe have a lot of vacant landowners, a lot of property owners that don't actually live in the units that they own. Maybe they park the money there as an investment from a foreign country or from, a tech millionaire or something that lives somewhere else but owns multiple housing units. So just, I don't think you have a specific number, but if you have a rough number, approximate number for the council as to how many potential parcels do you think this would even apply to, whether it was by ordinance or by voter measure?
If I had to take a rough guess, I'd be looking at about 50 to maybe 100 properties that this would apply to. And again, we would be looking at some buildings maybe not being vacant that long, where they're looking to be occupied. So we are looking at land as well. And of course, here in Bell Gardens, we really don't have a lot of available land. So whatever properties out there sit vacant, we always are trying to push the owners to build. But oftentimes they don't have enough incentive. So they'll just hold on to their vacant lands, maybe again for a tax reason or something else. But we want to incentivize them by saying, hey, well, if you're not going to do anything with your property, guess what? You're going to have to pay a fee, and we're going to have to monitor your property every year. So one thing also to keep in mind is that housing right now is of most importance to the city. We want to see housing developed. You know, we've been pushing on affordable housing, on market rate housing, on apartments, on ownership. And to see properties just sitting there that have the capacity and the ability to do that, you know, is very sad. So again, this would really incentivize those property owners to do something about their properties. So in conclusion, this is a receive and file report, or you can provide further direction to staff. Available if you have any questions. We have also our city planner, Mr. Stephen Jones here, who helped put this together. Thank you.
So as of right now, just to clarify, you said 50 to 100 properties. That's just a guesstimation. We actually don't have actual number of current properties or land that is vacant at this time within the city, correct?
That's correct, Mayor. Every month we do put together a list of vacant buildings that are up for lease or rental. But again, that's based on shopping centers that have vacancies. So in a sense, they're not really vacant properties, but vacant lease spaces.
Any additional questions or comments?
Yes, question here, Director. What will be the cost of starting some type of registry to the city? Or is that, do we need to do a study on that? And if so, then what will be the cost of the study?
We have actually right now a firm that has put together a cost study on a different item, though. It has to do with rent stabilization. But they are experts in finances and putting these cost studies together. We could actually approach them about adding on to their existing agreement, or we can go out to RFP and do this separately. I'm assuming based on other cost studies that we've done, we're probably looking at about 20 to 25,000 for the cost study.
Okay, thank you. And the reason why I'm just thinking about this, it was at first I didn't really see the point too much in this item, but as I talked to the city manager, we did come across some of the developments which are very limited. Here in Bell Gardens, we don't have a lot of open space. We're built out. This is one of the most densely populated cities in California. And I'm talking about in the top 20. So we are very, very densely populated. Everything's built out. But we do have a couple of areas that we're expecting to get about 90 or 80 units. And we just want to make sure that it gets built, right? As a politician that I am now, you know, in my last election, I talked about those units because that's really one of the things that we've been working towards. But ultimately, it's not up to us. It's not up to me when those units become available. It is up to the developer to build those units and provide more affordable housing. So then this started making a little bit more sense to at least look at and consider. So I just wanted to put that out there because if we identified a limited amount of space and we have the potential of having 100 affordable housing units, but they're just not coming to fruition, then I would like to see if there's any way that we can incentivize that or hurry it along because, you know, homelessness is an issue in our community. So that is just my comment there. And I appreciate you guys bringing this item to council. That's all. Thank you.
Mayor, if I maybe just based on some of the commentary here and avoiding unnecessary cost potentially, if I can make one offer for the council just to consider for us to bring back an item with an actual inventory of the number of residential, commercial units. How many of those does it look like this would even apply to? Because there are some that would generally probably be considered exempt to some degree, maybe at least from the voter part of it. We can do a rough cost estimate at no cost, just kind of determine what we think our time is. Obviously, that wouldn't be the dollar amount that would ever be charged. We'd have to do a study, but we can do that for free. And then let you know what this would look like if it was something that was done through the ordinance process or through a voter measure process. So we'd have an inventory. we'd be able to say, we think it's going to take X amount of time per unit to have a rental registry. Here's what the cost is. Therefore, here's what the fee would be per unit if you were to do an ordinance. And then based on the number of properties, if you were to do a voter measure at some similar cost as to what Oakland or other cities have approved, what would that look like from a financial perspective? So basically, if we could come back with a kind of a pro forma look at number of units, what would be probable somewhere ballpark fee amount that would be charged, what it would be used for, and then also what a voter measure would mean from a revenue perspective. At that point, I think you'd maybe be able to better give us direction as far as moving forward with the ordinance process or possibly even a voter tax measure.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, Gus, for the presentation. Really appreciate it. And also city manager for that recommendation. I think it's important that as we talk about our city's future, and we talk about events that are going to happen, not just here in the city of LA, but across the whole county, right? When we talk about 2028, 2026, the Olympics, the World Cup, the Sister project being complete next month, the aquatics pool, the affordable rental units that are going to be created, affordable units that are going to be built in the Burke Oil site now, the former Shoal Street and Jamoneria. I think of incentives. I think about the future of our city, and aligning with our general plan, creating economic growth, providing housing for affordable housing. I think that's always at the top of my mind. I think this is a great opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity, and I feel comfortable making that recommendation and that motion of bringing back this item with the inventory or a general inventory of those properties that it would apply to, and I would ask for a specific characteristic, whether that be commercial or like housing. And then I would also ask for who that applies, how much the fee would go to, or how much would the fee be, and then whether or not at the end of the day, if it's in our best interest to go through the voter side of things or a fee side of things. I believe that I think Gus had mentioned that there was another presentation or there was another segment of like the city of San Francisco or something, but I heard it didn't make it. So I'm also interested in seeing that updated slide as well. But I feel comfortable making that motion.
Yeah, and just for your information, Councilmember Chavez, what happened is we had an updated presentation. It shouldn't have said state of California on that measure M. That was the city of San Francisco for that.
Thank you.
So can you clarify your motion if that's what you're asking, so then we can get a second, please?
So the motion is for the next meeting, if possible. Would it be possible for the next meeting? Okay, perfect. For the next council meeting, bring back this item with an inventory of residential and commercial properties that this fee would apply to and where that fee goes to.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Chavez, second by Councilmember Barcena. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barcena?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez?
Yes.
And Mayor Sanchez?
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item 16?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor. This next item is an update on sidewalk vending. It's been an issue that's been brought to council several times over the last approximately 2 years, with at least one update to the municipal code regarding sidewalk vending, an update to council back in the spring, I believe also one earlier in the summer, and at the request of the mayor last meeting or the meeting before. We're bringing the information back. Our sidewalk vendor update will be provided by our Community Development Director, Gus Roma, at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager and Mayor and City Council once again. Sidewalk vending update for you. The last one that we did was in April 24th, this same council meeting. So just giving you a bit of history, SB 946, which is known as the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act, was approved in 2018 or signed into law and became effective January 1st, 2019. After that, the city, as well as several other cities, started looking into adopting or amending their own ordinances. Now, the city of Bell Gardens already had a sidewalk vending ordinance, but of course it had to update it to make sure it was in compliance with the state law. So the city went ahead and put together an ad hoc committee and adopted its ordinance in May of 2021. And then just not too long ago, April 10th, the city went ahead and adopted another ordinance, amending that ordinance because of changes in state law. And that was something that our city attorney brought before you on April 10th. So again, on April 24th is when we provided you the last update at your request, letting you know what's happening out there with regards to sidewalk vending. So I want to make sure that everybody understands, we're here to support all local businesses. Street vendors are what we deem as sidewalk vendors, as well as the brick and mortar businesses. They all work together to make this community thrive economically. We're not here to downplay sidewalk vendors. We want to support them. We want to be here to guide them through the process. With that being said, we want to make sure that everybody is compliant with not just our ordinance, but county health department regulations and the state. And this is again to ensure public health and safety, and also identify the impacts of unpermitted vending, encourage vendors to obtain permits, and assist vendors with the process, because we know that oftentimes it is difficult to go through that process. How do I get my health department permit? In some cases, they're not needed. You know, if you have a sidewalk vendor that doesn't sell hot food items that are created on the spot, then yes, they may not require health department permits. There are some others that are prepackaged items that they can create at home. They would have what's called a cottage industry permit to be able to cook at home. So there's different methods. We just want the vendors to come to us and tell us, hey, help me. How do I get my permit? We want to be able to educate on the regulations and provide that path to getting those approvals. The last time that you had come to us, we went ahead and put together a flyer. We distributed this flyer to all of our sidewalk vendors, and we encouraged them to come in and talk with city staff to get the process started. I would say there was probably a handful of vendors that did come to us. And even to this date, there are some that continue to come to us and ask us for help. And we're able to connect them with the county representative from the health department and take them through that process. Now, it is a matter of getting their health department approval for hot food vendors. But keep in mind, there's also flower vendors, fruit vendors, you know, merchandise vendors. The city has a total of 15 approved licenses. However, we don't have any hot food vendor licenses. So we haven't seen anybody come in with their health permit yet to be able to get a business license from the city. Our process is pretty simple. If you come in, you fill out your application and it's non-food related, you're going to get your business license right there over the counter. If you have hot food that you're preparing and you need your health department approvals, then we direct you to the health department, and it's up to the vendor at that point to get their approvals, bring them into the city, and then we can issue a business license.
Gus, before you move on too, I think it's important just from an inventorying of how many licensed vendors or how many vendors are operating in the city. So is my understanding when code enforcement is going out there on, I've seen the stats from weekend work that you guys have done, that you're making contact with all of the vendors that you see from driving throughout the city, your code enforcement officers, and obviously those that are hot food preparation are generally not licensed. But if you set that aside, is it accurate to say that the vendors that are selling fruit, food, merchandise that your code enforcement officers are encountering are licensed or are not licensed? Or is there a giant or some population, I shouldn't even say giant, is there some population of vendors that can actually get licenses pretty easy that are not?
What we're finding is that the ones that are having issues are the hot food vendors, the ones that are preparing food on the sidewalks. And those are the ones, I mean, we approach all vendors just to check, make sure they have their license. but we're aware of the ones that already have it, because they're always there. They're in their location. And when we do go up to them, we go up there to say, how you doing? Purchase something from them and so forth, and just continue encouraging them because we want them to be successful. We do the same with the unpermitted vendors. Our approach is not to cite. Now, the reason we've been citing is because the courtesy warning hasn't worked. And also, once we did the courtesy warning, we started doing the NOVs, the notices of violation. Then after 3 attempts at that, that didn't work. So the next approach and the last approach that we take is issuing an administrative citation. Now, of the vendors that we have issued administrative citations, we've only seen 4 come in to pay their admin citation. We haven't seen or heard from the rest of them. So again, our emphasis is to try to help, to educate, to assist the path towards approval. Now, one of the things that we're most concerned when we're out there is we see unrefrigerated food, and we're talking about not even ice, seeing food buckets of chicken sitting out in the hot sun, and you know how the weather's been. It's been hot out there. So we're concerned about that. Open containers, oftentimes, we find that instead of closing the containers, they're left out in the open. And it's not just a matter of the elements getting in there, but also flying insects and so forth. So there's a risk factor there that we're concerned about. Open flames and hot grease. You see here a large tub of grease, where food is being fried. I mean, everybody loves carnitas. I'll tell you, that's my favorite there. But concerned of something like that spilling over and burning someone. Open flames. As you can see here, lady on the sidewalk cooking with open flame, charcoal and sometimes wood in there. So that, again, is a fire concern. So again, we don't want to discourage. We want people to get encouraged to go and get their permits. But again, these are concerns that are out there. Property maintenance too. We see litter left, but also on the city's public medians, oftentimes the landscaping ends up dying. There's grease within that dirt area. And also we have local businesses complaining that they're being blamed for the grease going into our storm drains. And they're pointing out to, hey, it's the sidewalk vendor that did this. And ultimately, the city is responsible if the State Water Resources Board comes out and cites us. Number of violations we've issued over the last few months, total of 17 notice of violations and 31 administrative citations that followed that. County of Los Angeles, their health permit ranges from $393 to $772, or $167 an hour. And I know that can be costly, and that's why we want to be able to have the vendors come in and maybe we can propose looking after a grant for them to try to get that permit. I know ultimately that might not be available right now, but with enough interest and assisting the vendors, we might be able to find a small business grant through the SBA. Bell Gardens license, our annual renewal is $72 to $154 a year. So it's a very minimal amount for each vendor. So our recommendation today is just to receive and file. We wanted to provide you this update. If you have any questions, we also have our building services supervisor, Mr. George Suarez, here with us today. And our building, or I should say our code enforcement officer, Alvin Galinda, and our city planner, who's also been helping us with this.
And Gus, if I can just fill in a couple items, just I guess to clarify, we have licensed vendors. Gus mentioned there's 15 licensed vendors. The unlicensed vendors are probably the ones that we hear the most complaints about. Gus showed some of the photos in that. We hear resident complaints, business complaints. We talk about them not having a public health license, but I think we're aware that it's very clear if you look at the LA County Public Health website or you have presentations with LA County Public Health, that pop-up food vendors that are preparing food out in the open aren't going to be able to get a public health license. Without the public health license, they're not able to get a business license in the city of Bell Gardens. And that's why, there are things that can be done as far as prepackaged food from certified facilities and things of that nature. But your traditional food stand that that you see advertised on social media, that you see if you drive over on Florence or on Eastern or up on Gage, is not going to be able to get a public health license. So the staff, through the efforts that Gus described as far as notice of violations and citations, it hasn't been impactful from those pop-up food restaurants, if you want to call them that. That's County of Public Health's term that they use. I would call them, where they're preparing food out in the open. Some of that is just based on, we've got 3 code enforcement officers that also have other duties regarding building inspections and things of that nature, and their schedules. As soon as they issue a citation, somebody may leave, but they'll come back, whether it's 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and that's been encountered. So we employed additional resources through our CSOs, our community services officers, who are work hours that are outside of the normal hours, which line up more with when we will have these unlicensed vendors in the city of Bell Gardens. And they've been passing out flyers. They have issued no citations, anything like that, but have passed out flyers and informed the unlicensed vendors of the issues with them not having a license, and that's not allowed in the city of Bell Gardens. So where we're at today is we feel like we've done a good job at identifying licensed vendors, those that can easily be licensed, and helping them do so. And also realizing that there are unlicensed vendors, as many as 8 or 9 of them on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, that are here after our normal code enforcement hours. We've had additional resources through the CSOs, engaging those vendors and doing it in a way, trying to do it where it's the least of impact from them. As soon as they're setting up, letting them know that it's not allowed in the city of Bell Gardens. And we've generally been successful from the perspective of having less unlicensed vendors on the weekend nights or on any night. If you've noticed driving around, we've definitely heard this from businesses and from residents. And I think as council members have driven around the last couple of weekends, have probably noticed it as well. So as far as an update, that's where we are today. I think a position, as just to sum it up, we know the licensed vendors, we're continuously working to help those that can get license, but we're also informing, without citations at this point, unlicensed vendors that they're not, per municipal code, not allowed to operate in the city of Bell Gardens.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments at this time? May I have a motion to receive and file this report? I motion to receive and file. Can I get a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
If I may I make a substitute motion before that? I don't know if that's okay, legal. I think so. I thought there was going to be a little bit more conversation on this topic. That's why I held my comments. But I think that there's a lot to unravel in this conversation of street vending. And I definitely got my fair share of phone calls in regards to the vendors, legal or not legal, not being there anymore, right? So I have a request, and I do want to make a motion on this, but I think that as a council, as a previous committee member for the sidewalk vending committee, I think it's important to bring back the committee and to perhaps get into the nitty-gritty of what exactly consists sidewalk vending, how or what can be legal, and whatnot. So I think that we're not the only city that's going through this. You go to Cudahy, they got their own issue. You go to Bell, they got their issue. You go to Commerce, they have their issues, right? Southgate, I mean, I drive down to Firestone and Garfield, and there's quite a few street vendors. So I think we're all going through it. And I think it's an important topic to kind of dive deep. Now, if allowed, I'd like to make a motion to bring back the ad hoc committee. And then if possible, for the next council meeting, pick another ad hoc committee member. I sat on that ad hoc committee along with former council member Alejandra Cortez. Obviously, she's not here anymore. So I think that I'm going to need someone else to also be present and meet so we can dialogue and dive deeper onto this topic. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, and I apologize for not being able to think quickly in regards to the comments, but I appreciate Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Chavez motion and comments. I do think this will be an appropriate time for me to express how I feel about this issue. Obviously, it's a very complex issue. And the way that I think about it is, you know, our current laws, are they just? Do they provide justice for everyone, equality, right? And the truth is that they don't. Nevertheless, it is the law that we have to deal with right now. It's our responsibility as a council. Working with this current council, you know, obviously I'm getting to know a few of them that just came in. I honestly feel like everyone has good intentions. I think we all want to find a solution, because I know that when you guys are out there, for example, if you think of illegal immigrants, are you ready to point the finger and say, deport them, they're illegal, right? Probably not, right? That's what I would imagine. Well, it's a difficult situation here because we know that there are people out there working to survive. But at the same time, we know that we have laws that are dictating what we are required to do as a council. Now, I have a good intention. I want to make sure that before I punish, that I help, right? So my responsibility is making sure that I'm doing something to help first before I jump the gun and do something that I don't think is fair to my community. So my intention, and I'm glad that Mayor Pro Tem suggested this, is to help. Now, how can I help? Well, I'm doing to do what it takes to figure out a solution, whether it is to provide more education or resources to make sure that some of these sidewalk vendors become familiar with the law, that we give them the opportunity, because you have to remember, some of our community, based on the statistics, they don't have the education required to run a business. They don't have the means necessary to make it work. So what are we doing to help out a little bit? I want to make sure that we're doing something. And that's my perspective. And that's why I'm going to go ahead and second that motion to see if the ad hoc can come up with a way to help, right? Is there a possibility that we won't be able to do something? There's a possibility that we won't be able to do something, but I believe that we need to give it a fair shot. I also know that it's not really up to us. I know that it goes higher up the ranks, whether it's a county or the state. Let's see if we can do that as a council, if we can push a little bit, if we can do something for our community, right? And I'll go ahead and second that motion. Thank you.
And I think the theme here that we're hearing from staff and from all of us, it's about educating and supporting, right? So we're not saying no to street vendors, but we're saying let's educate them and support them so that we're all in compliance following the law, like you said. So I had a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Chavez to bring back the Sidewalk Vending Committee, and I had a second by Councilmember Barcena. City Clerk, can you please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Sanchez.
Yes. We'll now move to member comments, starting off with Councilmember Barcena.
Just want to thank staff for all the work that they're doing. I appreciate the opportunity to have a second look at that proposal that came in for the website. I think we're gonna make a more informed decision, and I'm looking forward to seeing that item come back at the next meeting. Also, I'm excited to see what we can do for our community, for our sidewalk vendors. And I think there is good action coming out of this council, so I appreciate everyone's efforts. And thank you to everyone that came to the meeting here today. Thank you to the directors. And also thank you to everyone that's going to be coming to our September 16th event, which is Fiestas Patrias, because we do live in the city of Bell Gardens. So I hope that you know that all of you are invited to our event. We're going to have a banda. Which banda is it, Director?
Banda Imperio.
Banda Imperio is going to be here. Banda Imperio is it's a music group that sort of represents some of our culture. So we're very, very proud to have it and very, very happy to have them here too. So you're all invited, even if you don't like some of our culture, you're still invited. No worries. And thanks to everyone that came to the council meeting. And that's my comments.
Councilmember Gomez.
Good evening. I would like to share something not related to anything that we've been discussing tonight. Essentially, this is about Medi-Cal enrollment. I don't know if many of you know or are aware, but as of January 1st, 2024, everyone between the ages of 26 to 49 will be eligible to receive full Medi-Cal benefits regardless of their immigration status. The only thing that will be taken into consideration is income at that point and all of the other requirements. But I really do want to encourage everyone to apply. We have had the Medi-Cal renewals that are happening now for anyone who needs healthcare coverage. So please be sure to complete your renewal packages. If you have elderly parents who have not completed their renewals, please help them to complete their renewals. Again, anyone age 50 and over at this point can receive full scope Medi-Cal benefits, again, regardless of immigration status. So I'm hoping to put together something for the city, for the residents, to be able to come out and bring the enrollments out to you so that you can make sure that everyone signs up and everyone gets their health benefits. Thank you.
Councilmember Pulido.
I just want to thank everyone that participated today. Thank you, staff, for putting together presentations. And thank you for your hard work. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, for staying throughout the whole meeting. Want to touch on a couple of things that have happened since our last meeting, and also give a couple of shout outs to staff for all the amazing work that they're doing. I saw that on the biweekly report that we're going to have our September 25th rental registry and additional staffing, I think, for the next council meeting, right? So that's important. Obviously, our city council last year took upon themselves to pass rent stabilization ordinance along with just cause eviction protections. So we're finally going to get that information now in terms of creating a rental registry, how much it'll cost, and if we're going to need more staffing for that. Obviously, we're a rent dominant city. 80% of our community, mostly 80% of our community, close to 80% of the community is renters. So I think this is a very important function that is required to make that rental stabilization ordinance work. I also want to give a shout out to our community development department for continually maintaining and setting up the monthly rent control meetings. Every month they have a workshop for property owners and tenants. And this month it'll be on September 19th for property owners and the 20th for the tenants. So September 19th, property owners rent control, and then September 20th, tenants rent control information. I also want to thank them for doing outreach to our mobile home parks. We have quite a few mobile home parks here in our city. So it's always important for us to be reaching out to everybody in the city. So our mobile home parks that we have, I think we have close to about 20 of them scattered throughout our city. And some mobile home parks are small. There's maybe about 5 or 6 trailers. And then some mobile home parks have about 40 or 50 trailers. So, I mean, it just ranges. So I'm glad to see that outreach is being done there. I also want to acknowledge that last week it was Labor Day, which was Monday. Last Monday, which was Labor Day, give a shout out to all the unions that played a part in history to create this incredible day and the holiday that we deserve. Labor and unions play a big role in my part. I'm an organizer by trade, so I'm glad to see that. I also want to give a shout out. This last week we had our youth softball awards hosted by our Parks and Recreation. Great event recognizing the youth and all the work that they're doing. And then also simultaneously, we had a neighborhood watch meeting at the NYC. I was able to attend for about a couple minutes or so. And there was a lot of interaction between our officers and our coordinator, Paniagua, and all the work that they're doing there. So I'm glad to see that. I think we need constant communication between our community, those who are serving it, And the residents were very engaged. They asked questions about everything from, being able to have those tough conversations with their kids, right? And at the same time, if they have calls about noise complaints, who do they call, right? So I'm glad to see that our officers were there present. Finally, in our last meeting, we had a climate action resolution proposal that was sort of brought up. I know we're going to bring it back. We touched on environmental justice. After that meeting, I remember our community development director, Gus, had tapped and said that we had actually applied for a climate action plan, a grant. And I think we did receive the grant, about $211,000. So I'm really happy to see that we're going to get a climate action plan grant. It's not for specifically this year, but for I think 4 or 5 years or so, give or take. This is really important. I think this is a direction that most cities are going to head towards here in California. So $211,000. I mean, just for us applying. So I'm really glad to see that. Also want to announce that our sister project, the project that's on Park Lane, obviously first half of the parking lot has already been open, but the second half should be open within the next couple of weeks or so. We're going to be complete with the project by the end of this month. So I'm finally glad to see that the other side of the parking lot is going to be open. I've gotten quite a few concerns. I'm assuming all of us have gotten calls from our constituents and residents who live alongside there about the impacts that the parking lots have had. So having another one open is always going to be great, especially during the weekends when the kids have the games and whatnot. And then also as far as softball and our baseball fields, all new equipment coming along. So I'm excited to see that. And then finally, I just want to recognize the events that happened, the tragic events that had happened in 9/11 back in 2001. I say we conclude our meeting on the remembrance for all those that we lost. Thank you.
I want to echo what a lot of my colleagues have said. Thank you so much to all the staff. I especially want to thank the community service officers for going out and educating the street vendors, and hopefully we can educate, help, and support through the sidewalk vending committee that's going to be forming. I also am in honor of Emergency Preparedness Month. I know that the city doesn't have an official CERT team, which is a community emergency response team. So I was wondering if that's something that we can look into to see if hopefully Bell Gardens can establish a team like that within our city, so that we're prepared for an emergency or catastrophe, something that were to happen. I also hope to see all the residents and everybody join us for the Grito on September 16th. And once again, I welcome the community to continue coming to the meetings. It's really nice to see you guys here being involved with all the decisions that are being made throughout the city. So I welcome you to continue coming to the city council meetings and vocalizing your concerns. With that being said, before I adjourn the meeting, please let's take a moment of silence for all of the individuals that were impacted of the terrorist attack on September 11th, 2001. Thank you. If there's no objection by the members, I will now adjourn the City Council Successor Joint Meeting in memory of the individuals impacted of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001, 22 years ago, today at 8:11 p.m. Thank you for coming.